Okay, so let's talk about, now it's not just in our heads, we're going to move on, and now we're going to actually engage in some sexual activity, masturbation. Masturbation is any sexual activity, any pleasurable activity that you're doing by yourself. Now, there have been across time changing attitudes about masturbation. In the 1200s, St. Thomas Aquinas said that masturbation was actually a worse sin than rape, incest, and adultery, because there was no possibility of procreation in masturbation. At least in rape, maybe a baby will be born. Maybe at least in incest, maybe a baby will be born, right? So it's like, okay, that's a different value, isn't it? In the 1800s, during what we call the Victorian era, people were so repressed about sex that they, this little device that you see in the picture, that was for men to wear so they wouldn't touch themselves. And they had similar kinds of horrific devices for women. And they thought that masturbation would lead to impaired morals, depression, social failure. And then you got to love this: epilepsy, tuberculosis, blindness, insanity, sterility, and early death. At least, hair on your palms isn't on the list. That was what I was always told when I was a little kid. It was always a total joke when anybody, in my youth ever said it, but they'd always joke about, hair on your palms. But that's not on the 1800s list. By 1991, we're moving into the modern era. Some of you were even alive during this period. The U.S. Surgeon General Jocelyn Elders was fired for suggesting that masturbation should be included in health class. So, you got to remember, cast yourself back to 1991. This was when HIV was very poorly understood. And so, at that time, they were advising people just not to have sex unless they knew for sure their partner was monogamous. And the truth was, they even tried to tell us that you don't even know if your partner was monogamous. So really, pretty much having sex was going to kill you. That was pretty much the message. And so and they didn't think that condoms worked very well. They had all sorts of very, well, I guess we just can't have sex kind of attitudes. So Jocelyn Elders made the suggestion that health classes should include a conversation about masturbation as normal, healthy, a perfectly fine way to express one's sex drive and stuff like that. And she gave one talk, and Bill Clinton told her, "You can't be talking about that anymore. People don't like it. You're really, people are really getting on my case about you talking about this stuff." And so then she talked about it again, and so he ended up firing her because she was really suggesting that kids who were less than 18 years old should be told about masturbation as an advantage and a way to release sexual tension. And of course, they made fun of her. There's a piece that I have linked in our classroom because they really made fun of her and made it seem like she was going to tell kindergartners how to masturbate and all sorts of, obviously that's not what she meant. But so in 700 years, I'm not sure that we had moved that far in our attitudes about masturbation. Now we have sort of different attitudes. Now this poll is from 2013, and it was undergraduates at Brown University, which is an Ivy League school on the East Coast. And these are the rates of masturbation that people reported. So you have 1% who masturbate more than once a day, and you have 19% who claim that they've never masturbated. And then you have, everybody in between who are like somewhere between once a day to less than once a month. So a lot of variation, but a lot of my students in my live classes go, 19% have never masturbated? You've got to be kidding me. These are 18 to 22-year-olds. It's hard to believe. But there are, there's a subset of people who report at least that they've never masturbated. Here's another variation, another way of reporting the data broken down by different categories. So you see that at least once a day is in the black bars. 1 to 5 times a week would be the darkest gray bars. Less than once a week is the medium range gray, and then never is the light gray. So you see the all students at the top, which replicates what I showed you on the right. And then we break it down by males, and you see that females are much more likely to report that they masturbate less than once a week or never. And then you have your freshmen versus sophomores, juniors and seniors. You see the juniors and seniors seem to have a little bit more time on their hands or something, right? Because they're masturbating at higher rates than the freshmen and sophomores. And then you see that the non-athletes seem to, again, have a little more time on their hands because they're masturbating more often than the varsity athletes. And then you get your heterosexuals, bisexuals, and homosexuals. And bisexuals and homosexuals seem to be masturbating at higher rates than the heterosexuals. So whatever we can make from a poll of Brown University undergraduates, I thought this was interesting data. I don't know if it necessarily generalizes to all undergraduates or not, but it's kind of an interesting little survey. Now, we definitely do have different attitudes about masturbation than people once had. For one thing, we're acknowledging the benefits of masturbation. I made a little flower that we're going to put the petals in one by one. For one thing, and we're going to revisit this as the course goes on, masturbation can be really helpful for sexual self-discovery. One of the things I think that women really do a disservice for themselves with is not finding out for themselves what things are pleasurable, what things feel good, where their body parts are, and instead they oftentimes rely on their partners to figure it out. And, if you combine, if you've got a heterosexual couple and the female is not really sure or comfortable with her own body, and then you've got a male who's not comfortable asking or checking, you might have really dissatisfying sexual interactions. And so knowing your own body is a huge benefit of masturbation. Again, for women, it provides relief from menstrual pain. When the uterus contracts at orgasm, it helps to release some of the, well, first off, some of the endometrial layer can be shed and expelled. And it releases hormones that actually reduce our pain sensations. Oxytocin helps to make us feel less pain. And so if you have menstrual cramps, masturbation can help to relieve those. Relief from stress, both sexes can relate to this. If you're under a lot of tension, you're feeling really anxious, an orgasm can really help to, again, release oxytocin that can help you to feel more calm and relaxed and less stressed. It helps us to release cortisol, which is one of our stress combating hormones. So when you secrete the oxytocin, which is the hormone that causes the contractions of our soft muscles at orgasm, that oxytocin causes us to secrete cortisol, and cortisol helps us to combat stress so that we feel more peaceful. It also lowers our blood pressure because, as we remember from the sexual arousal chapter, you get that spike of blood pressure at orgasm that afterwards, when you're going through resolution, your blood pressure actually drops below what it probably started out as. So lowers your blood pressure. People who masturbate oftentimes report having better sexual interactions with their partners than people who don't masturbate report. And one hypothesis for that is that, well, first off, there's the sexual discovery, so that you know how your own body works and stuff like that. There's increased comfort with your own body and increased confidence that you get from knowing that you can figure out how your body works. So, hopefully you can be sensitive and figure out how your partner's body works. So confidence, security, those things come from masturbation that can actually help with when you're with a partner. Of course, if you don't have a partner, or you're worried about having sex with a partner because of STIs or pregnancy, well, this is the safest sex you can have, is sex with yourself, assuming you started off with clean hands and stuff like that, right? So safe sex. Sometimes in a couple, one has a stronger sex drive than the other, and so it's a way to satisfy the partner who has a stronger sex drive without having to feel like they have to go outside the relationship or something like that. One of the things that can be hard about that, though, is that the partner with the lower sex drive sometimes feels offended that the one with the higher sex drive actually, masturbates to release their sexual tension. And that's something that the person who has the lower sex drive probably needs to work on, because it's not really fair to expect your partner to only have sex those times that you feel like having sex. And if their outlet is masturbation, there's nothing to be threatened by. There's nothing wrong with it. Now, if your partner is becoming more interested in having sex by themselves and that sex by themselves is actually not that much by themselves because they're fueling it with pornography and other kinds of things. And they're starting to think, well, fine, I don't need to have sex with you. I'll just have sex with these people on the internet that I don't know. Okay, we're moving into something else. But if you've got a partner who's just releasing their tension, it's really unfair of the one with the lower drive to think, well, they shouldn't be doing that. They should be waiting for me. It helps in the resolution of lots of different sexual dysfunctions. When we get to chapter 7, we're gonna talk about that more, how masturbation can help with a lot of dysfunction. And then finally, the release of sexual tension or frustration. That kind of goes back to the compensation for disparity. It also goes back to stress. All this stuff's interacting. So basically, we shouldn't be ashamed when we masturbate. We shouldn't make kids feel bad about exploring their own bodies and things like that. We're going to talk about in another chapter, children's development and how adults should react to it. So, all right, so let's move on a little bit farther. So now we're going to be with someone else. So we've already been erotically touching ourselves so far, but now we're going to move on and be with someone else. Okay, so the most common, most frequent of all the erotic touches is kissing. And, it's something that a lot of people start doing when they're fairly young, late childhood and into early adolescence is, not uncommon for people's first kiss, but it's something that people usually persist with through their full adulthood. Kissing is a really common, erotic behavior. It's really interesting because sometimes we talk about why is kissing so erotic? And actually, I don't mean to take all the fun out of everything, but it's not that surprising. I mean, your mouth and tongue are full of so many nerve endings. When you were born, that was the only part of your body that was fully hooked up to your touch reception areas in your brain. You have so many neurons devoted to processing information coming in from your lips and tongues. You wouldn't believe it. I mean, in my intro to psych class, I show a sensory homunculus, which is like a little statue that's supposed to be representing by different sized body parts how much of your brain is devoted to processing information from those structures. And the absolute the biggest areas, they're so disproportionate to what they look like in real life, are your lips and tongue, because there's so much sensation. So it's not surprising that people would find it pleasurable to put these highly sensitive areas together. Your lips and tongue have more sensation than your genitals do. So very sensitive areas. And then people have talked about culturally why there are variations in whether people kiss or how they kiss. And basically putting our faces together is a really good way to assess health. The genetic fitness of a potential partner, because you can smell their breath, you can smell whether their teeth are rotting, you can smell whether they've got something that doesn't smell good coming out of their lungs, right? You can get a lot of information just from being, having your face shoved up against each other. So some cultures don't really put their lips together as much as they really are sort of sniffing each other. That's what they used to call Eskimo kissing in the olden days. All the way up to very deep kissing, and that the deep kissing allows us to assess each other's pheromones and all sorts of things. So it's not that mysterious that we do it. So it's possible that kissing evolved to assess health. Sensual massage, another common form of erotic touch. A lot of times it's like the step that people will make when they go from sort of, okay, we held hands, and then like the next step is, oh, you want me to give you a back rub or shoulder rub, and you're still fully clothed, but you're sort of touching each other. Of course, one of the reasons why that's so pleasurable is because pressing on your muscles in a rhythmic way helps you to release endorphins, which mask pain, and also helps you to release dopamine, which makes you feel pleasure. And then mutual masturbation. Here's another one of those statue pictures. I told you see more of them as the quarter went on from that building. Now you'll notice these people in the picture have had their faces shot off. Like I said, this is a controversial sculpture, and people have tried to desecrate the sculpture because they think it's offensive. What these two people are engaging in, well, she is masturbating him. I don't see it that much mutuality, although he is touching her breast, so I guess that's his mutuality. So touching each other is mutual masturbation. Usually we're talking about genital touching. So these, I gave you the little citation where this temple is in India. And like I said, some groups have found this really offensive and they've been trying to get rid of it. So those are my examples of erotic touch. And if you've ever had any kind of boyfriend, girlfriend kind of relationship with, in the past, you know that you've gone through some of these steps. And, a lot of times we have like cutoff points where we don't want to go any farther than that until we get to a certain level of commitment and stuff like that. So erotic touch is definitely, steps towards, we all know, things that could become more in-depth sexual behaviors with our partner. Okay, so let's go ahead and stop here and we'll come back and we'll talk about a much more in-depth sexual behavior, oral sex.